Islands. They're the one place where you can truly be as you are. Where it doesn't matter what you've done, how you make your life, you're just there. With the sun, the sand, the sea, and the locals. Where the notion of no shoes, no shirt, no problems isn't a song title, but a way of life. My way of life. Where I feel the most alive, where I feel the most settled. When I'm not with you, the fans, out there on the road, it's where I feel really at home. I've been up to my neck, working 6 days a week, wearing holes in the soles of the shoes on my feet. Been dreaming of getting away since I don't know. Ain't no better time than now for Mexico. No shoes, no shirt, no problem. Blues, what blues? Hey, I forgot 'em. The sun and the sand and a drink in my hand with no bottle. And no shoes, no shirt, and no problems.
No shoes, no shirt, no problem. This is your favorite host, Steel. Happy Monday. And online with me right now is your second most favorite show host, Ajax. Good evening, Ajax. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome, man. We're going to bring the noise.
You know why I played that song, right?
I couldn't hear it, to be honest.
Okay, so I played No Shoes, No Shirt, No Problems by Kenny Chesney.
Oh, okay. So we're all going to be broke without shirt, shoes, and is that what you're implying there?
No. I'm implying that it's been a horrible, horrible rainy day today and a horrible, horrible rainy weekend in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm really missing Mexico. No shoes, no shirt, no problem. Once again, happy Monday. So what do you have for me today?
Let's talk about what's going on in the world. We just had some big results.
I can tell you what's going on in the world.
Okay.
Erin Andrews just won a $55 million lawsuit for some pervert peeping through a peephole in a hotel she was staying in a few years ago.
I saw that. I actually think it's kind of crazy that you can assign collective blame. You know, the shareholders of whatever hotel are somehow culpable of this crime. I don't get that. Why is the individual not fully responsible?
Well, the individual's been held responsible, but what happened is the hotel staff actually kind of collaborated, not knowing that they were collaborating, by telling the pervert where Erin Andrews was staying, the room number, and they gave him a room next to her. And what he did was somehow he managed to switch out the peephole in the door, like flip it around so he has a telescopic view of the interior. So he actually managed to make a video of Erin Andrews, the sportscaster on ESPN, while she was changing her clothes. Quick trivia: where do you think Erin Andrews went to school?
I would suggest maybe Florida State University.
Pretty close, bro, but she went to UF. She's a Gator.
I just saw she had blonde hair and blondish hair, so I assumed Florida State. That's kind of where all the blondes go.
And man, I'm not gonna complain, man. Like, I had a pretty good time. I mean, I know you're a Catholic and all. You don't look at women, but you only look at your priests. But
Hey, you're leading to a good point. When I'm talking about collective blame,
yes,
it's like if you have a pedophile priest, then all the parishioners of the church got to pay this kind of fine for this one, or it goes across. It's like this idea where you have this kind of punitive damage against large collective associations
Yeah.
for the actions of one individual. And
And
I really have a big problem with that.
yeah, anyway, just want to lighten up the mood. Moving on, I wanted to make a correction to the last show. There was a question on if Republicans have super delegates. Yes, Republicans do have super delegates. From what I last read, there are 150 super delegates in the Republican primaries. They are not pledged as of now. So just wanted to clarify on that. Moving on in the current affairs section, basically, the primaries are moving on full steam ahead. And this past weekend, two players had an awesome showing. On the Republican side, we had Ted Cruz. He won two primaries, one in Kansas, the other in Maine. And then we have Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side. He won the primaries in Nebraska, in Maine, and where was the third place he won the primaries?
I just remember Nebraska and Maine, but was it Kansas? I don't know.
Kentucky.
Kentucky?
Was it Kentucky or let me look it up.
I remember Cruz had going back to Cruz for a second. He had a big showing in Kentucky when he was, going into the election. He was expected to lose by significant margin, and in Kentucky he actually pulled off a near upset. So that kind of put a little bit of fire, under his campaign in his, battle against Donald Trump and his consolidation of the anti-Trump vote.
Yes,
it seems to be taking place at this moment.
Well, and some people make a very valid point here, because the stage has been so split among so many candidates, and Donald Trump has been taking full advantage of the situation, calling people names, being all kinds of disrespectful and derogatory on the stage, and never getting into the substance. And did you watch the last Republican primary debate?
Yeah, I felt like it just kind of devolved into a shitstorm. Pardon the crude language, but I don't know any other way to describe it.
People say that Trump was being all kinds of derogatory with the penis talk, but I think like that was Trump cracking, because the guy does not have any substance. He has all the bluff but no material, so it all devolved pretty quick. Basically the outcome of the debate was pretty evident on the weekend. Most of the voters who made last minute decisions, they decided to vote for Cruz in Maine and in Kansas, where Marco Rubio had the governor's backing, Sam Brown back, one of the conservatives who was well known around 8 years ago, probably once upon a time a potential presidential candidate. He didn't do well, I think it was in 2008. He didn't do well in the primaries, but he got the governor's endorsement and he still lost. He came in third.
I wanted to comment on that. I found that kind of be pretty interesting, because he kind of represents the kind of moral majority, the religious element of the party, and what happened with him, supporting Rubio was kind of interesting. He kind of showed his kind of neocon
yes.
But I got to give the guy some credit in the state, though. He's got a pretty substantial tax cutting record, though. The left kind of attacks him left and right for cutting taxes, for blowing up the budget, quote unquote. And so he's got a good record of being a tax cutter. But supporting Rubio kind of shows his kind of neocon stripes.
One thing you have to understand is that it's the death of the neoconservative movement. The neoconservatives themselves kind of find it offensive to be called neoconservatives. They don't take pride in the term neoconservatives anymore. Like, it's like they keep like coming back in different shape and form. Like, in 2008, the whole Tea Party movement started, and a lot of these people, they came in as Tea Party conservatives, like Nikki Haley of South Carolina, and they just ended up becoming the mainstream neoconservative Republicans. And like, look at these people in South Carolina. Nikki Haley endorsed Marco Rubio, and he lost. Sarah Palin, another conservative, she endorsed Donald Trump in Alaska, and he lost. And then Sam Brownback, he endorsed what's his name? Marco Rubio. in Kansas, and he lost. So I think like it's the death of the neoconservative movement in American politics. That's pretty evident from the election results so far. The coming elections this week, tomorrow we have elections in Idaho, in Michigan, in Mississippi, and Hawaii. So these are all Republican primaries, and basically Trump is said to have a lead in Michigan at least, and we'll see where it goes. I have a strong feeling that Cruz is going to take Hawaii and Idaho, and Michigan's going to be a strong fight. And then in Mississippi, there is a good chance that Cruz will have a pretty strong showing.
Well, I am convinced that Donald Trump will do well in Michigan. It is proportionally allocated delegates there, but he does talk about manufacturing jobs and the kind of, I think the kind of free trade at all costs wing of the Republican Party doesn't play well with the Michigan and those kind of Rust Belt areas, and I think Donald Trump has effectively tapped into this kind of cynicism of TPP and trade deals with China, and he talks about trade deficits. I think that plays well for him there, and polls I've seen have him significantly ahead there. But what I think it's going to come down to is Florida and Ohio within the next 2 weeks, because they're winner-take-all states, and I know Rubio was 10, 15 points behind Donald Trump in Florida, and if he drops out, then it could be.
Can I stop you there briefly?
Go ahead.
And then you can continue. Let's give Rubio some credit. He won the Puerto Rico primaries yesterday, and it was a big headline on CNN. I mean, finally, like little man Rubio won something.
He got Minnesota too. Tim Pawlenty, a former presidential candidate, supported him, and he was a big, I guess, a very popular governor, I guess an effective manager, and did well for the the economy of Minnesota, from my understanding.
And I want to point out to something that may be the downfall of Donald Trump finally. I mean, I haven't used the word downfall and Trump in the same sentence so far, but now I am daring to use these two words in the same sentence, and I believe that this is the moment when the current elections start to take a different turn. And during the last presidential debate, the issue of New York Times having an audio recording of Donald Trump where he says off the record that he really does not mean to build a wall or deport people or have selective immigration policies based on people's faith, like the whole ban on Muslim immigration from the Middle East. He's not going to be implementing any of those things that he's promising his voters right now. And the moderator asked Donald Trump if he'll ask New York Times to release the tape, and Donald Trump said no. He totally declined to ask New York Times to release this tape. So we know that there's evidence out there that the media is sitting on right now that they could use to bring down Trump, but they're not using it, because I believe that in the establishment media's playbook right now, they are planning for Hillary as a Democratic candidate, and then Trump as I've always said he's the Manchurian candidate. He's a fixer for the Clintons. I mean, dude, like, you will not catch me, inviting communists and socialists to my wedding reception or something, like people who I intellectually and philosophically disagree with. You're not gonna catch anarchists hanging around with me, like people who I disagree with intellectually and philosophically. So, I mean, there's plenty of evidence of Trump socializing with the Clintons, and I believe that he's a Clinton plant. I've always said that. So the whole idea is to put Trump in as the standard bearer of the Republican Party, and in the process totally gut the Republican Party, and then give the election to Hillary Clinton. And that's what's going on. And then in the fall, when Trump is officially the guy for the Republican Party. They are going to start releasing these pieces of evidence piecemeal to bring down Trump and give the election to Hillary Clinton. That's what I believe is exactly going on, and that's the reason that the establishment and the media don't want a credentialed conservative like Ted Cruz to emerge as a potential Republican nominee. What do you have to say about all this?
I I mean I like the story. It sounds
Don't call it
interesting.
a story; it's a theory.
The theory, the story, whatever you want to call it. I really don't think it's very coordinated like that. I really think it's
Oh, you'll be
one of,
surprised, bro. Like, do you believe in the Bohemian Grove?
no, what's the Bohemian Groove?
The Bohemian Grove is supposedly a super secret, under the wraps meeting of America's elites and potentially elites from overseas, where they gather and they have these crazy satanic rituals. And I have seen videos of that, and nobody in the elite movement wants to admit that Bohemian Grove actually exists. Like, this is basically a step above the Bilderberg Group. If you heard of the Bilderberg Group,
Well, I've heard of the Skull and Bone Society and
but that is
these
in
kind.
Yale.
Yeah,
Skull and Bones is in Yale.
well, I mean these kind of secret Freemasonic groups that quote unquote are connected around the world and pull the strings
Mm-hmm.
on all the governments and
Mm-hmm.
they created Bretton Woods.
Mm-hmm.
They control the Federal Reserve. They loot the Treasury whenever they need money printed for X, Y, and Z
And
thing. But I don't know enough to be able to
and
comment on it. But I really think that there is some element of that. But I don't think in this case. I think it's just an arrogant guy who just wants to wants his own narcissism
y-
massage. But it's just my opinion.
you wish you could oversimplify it like the way you just did, but I truly believe that there's more to the story. I truly believe that this guy is applied by the Republican Party, by the larger establishment, the whole idea is to totally gut the Republican Party. Basically, this is the end of the Republican Party if we don't have a meaningful nominee. The Republican Party will cease to exist after this because it will be the party of Trump. People will remember it as the party of the racists, the misogynists, and segregationists. So this is basically the final death knell that is being cast on the Republican Party right now, and
Well,
that's the reason that even like the mainstream establishment Republicans want to stop Trump at any cost, because they know that this is the end of their party if they don't stop Trump.
and the truth is, the Republican Party is too large an umbrella. This kind of Nixonian coalition that they've sort of patchwork together. They have views sort of contradictory to one another. Like you have this foreign interventionist wing, this non-interventionist
Yeah,
wing. You have this big government wing. You have this small government wing.
yeah.
It's like this is kind of patchwork kind of coalition, and really a lot of the coalition is completely diametrically opposed to one another.
And
So it's sort of irrational.
and and I'll tell you something. Like what really, really, really bothers me is that elements of the non-mainstream media, like Breitbart, like Drudge Report, like Infowars, Alex Jones, and all, they have thrown their full weight behind Donald Trump. I mean, these are the people who I've always expected to like dig deeper into the candidate, into the story, and have a clearer picture for their listeners and their audience. And they have thrown their entire weight behind Donald Trump like blindly, knowing that this guy was a Democrat like 5, 6 years ago, and this guy stands for almost everything that the conservative movement has always stood against. Um, Mitt Romney says that Donald Trump might have a bombshell in his tax returns, and I truly believe that bombshell he is talking about is his possible donations to pro-abortion groups like Planned Parenthood, and that's the reason he came out with arms swinging in defense of Planned Parenthood. If women need a mammogram, if women need emergency health services and all, they can always go to the ER. Like it or not, Planned Parenthood is not about women's health. It's about population control, as it was intended by one of the original founders, Margaret Sanger. Your turn.
Yeah, I heard something on NPR this morning. They were talking about this author who was writing about the time of eugenics in this country, and there was this very dark period in U.S. history where the state and local governments, kind of plotted to decide who was best to, procreate. They did forced sterilizations of people that they basically found an
Mm-hmm.
excuse. Sometimes they said it was based on low
Mm-hmm.
intelligence or some ethnic sort of like. But
Oh,
the problem I have with that is it's a very slippery slope. If
yes.
you say everybody's stupid, I got freckle face and red hair. We talked about. They could say us gingers are the armies of the devil. You know what I mean?
What,
And
what,
then
what,
then
what?
then
You're
sterilize
saying
us.
you're saying that gingers are not the army of the Satan?
Well, that's what Hitler
But,
said. And, he tried to put us in the into the
ta-
back of the bus.
talking about Hitler, actually, it recently came out that one of his testicles was smaller than the other testicles, so even he was not perfect. Moving on to
Well,
Donald Trump. Yeah, go
can
ahead.
I just make one more point on that?
Yes.
This interview is really interesting. This author, he kind of went on to talk about how in the early part of the 20th century, these judges were making decisions and there was a story about this young lady who was it was a really sad story of a foster child, and they took away her ability to reproduce by saying she was she was an idiot, or
Mm-hmm.
and the government basically sterilized her, and they found out later on there was nothing wrong with her, and it's like it just became this kind of blemish on
Mm-hmm.
U.S. history.
Mm-hmm.
But this then he goes on to talk about how we need, Scalia.
Yes.
Scalia's passing away. This was what I found interesting. That he talked about how Scalia's passing away provided an opportunity for progressive movement to transform society in a more just way. And
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, gosh, this guy's corpse isn't even even
Not
in,
even cold.
and he wants to trash him and
Mm-hmm.
link it with eugenics. I mean,
Yeah.
it was disgusting. I liked the story until that end. It was just
So the larger point of the segment is basically that Donald Trump may have potentially donated to one of these garbage groups in the past. I understand that he's being audited right now for the current fiscal year, and it's going to take him a while. But why doesn't he release the tax returns for the past 10 years? Let people know where he's been giving his money. Let people know who he has been donating the money. I mean, there's some information that is politically available. And that tells us that Donald Trump donated to Hillary Clinton 4 times. Now, my thing is, I'll tell you something. He claims that he's a businessman and he likes to have all his 5 fingers in the honey. So that raises another question. That is a problem in Washington, D.C., cronyism. So overall, basically, the picture does not look very pretty, and I could see the cracks with Donald Trump in the last Republican debate, and the effects of that were pretty evident in the last primaries on Saturday. Donald Trump, who's actually been crushing the other opponents, pretty much came neck to neck with Ted Cruz in terms of delegate count. So there's only a difference of 80 some delegates between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. So unless Donald Trump wins Florida, it's almost the end for Donald Trump, and this is where his fortunes start reversing. So that's what I feel is going to happen in the days to come. Hey, let's take a quick break and then come back, and in the next segment we would like to talk about the liberal hypocrisy, the liberal media hypocrisy. So let's go ahead and take a 2 to 3 minute quick break and then come back and talk about the segment related to Caitlyn Jenner. We'll be right back.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I've been around for a long, long year. Stole many a man's soul and faith. I was around when Jesus Christ had his moment of doubt and pain. Made damn sure the pilot washed his hands and sealed his face. Pleased to meet you. Hope you guessed my name. But change. Killed the Tsar and his ministers. Anastasia screamed in vain. I rode a tank, held a generous rank when the blitzkrieg raged and the bodies stank. Pleased to meet you. Hope you guess my name. Oh yeah. I was puzzling you with the nature of my game. Oh yeah. I watch with glee while you kings and queens fought for 10 decades for the gods they made. I shouted out, who killed the Kennedys? When after all, it was you and me. Let me please introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I lay traps for troubadours who get killed before they reach Bombay. Pleased to meet you. Hope you get my name. Oh yeah. But what's puzzling you is the nature of my game. Oh yeah. Get down with it.
Sympathy for the Devil by Rolling Stones. So Ajax, why did you pick that song?
It just says a lot about the world we live in today. You know, I feel like it's evil abounding, but yeah, I was listening to it earlier and it sounded really cool too. So, so what did you think? What is this liberal hypocrisy that you're talking about that you've been seeing in the media? Go ahead.
Well, one of the reasons I want to bring it up, this song is pretty relevant, is because it's related to the next segment. I read a story on Voactive about all the LGBTQ. Yeah, it just keeps getting bigger. It was LG, then became B, then T, and now they added a Q for queers. So basically, they are kind of like up in arms against.
No, let me correct you. The Q, I think, is questioning. Those are people.
Hey man, look, I'll tell you something, all right? I have nothing against anybody who's different. I believe in diversity. I believe I am a product of diversity, all right? But at the same time, diversity is a two-way street. If you expect diversity for yourself, then be prepared to allow diversity for others. So they're up in arms because he endorsed Ted Cruz, and they are because supposedly like Ted Cruz has issues with transgender people. And I did my research. I asked Dr. Google, tell me, what is it that Senator Cruz has an issue with transgender people? And I couldn't come up with anything. I mean, literally nothing. So I mean, the whole fuss is about nothing. You get my point?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't support marriage equality, quote unquote. But I would say
what does that have to do with transgender people?
Well, that's their big hiccup on him. They're trying to make this sort of solidarity movement, and that LGBT people are in the same boat as Rosa Parks, and that they're sitting at the back of the bus, and as far as equality before the law. This is their argument. I mean, I don't subscribe to it, but this is what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and they kind of say Ted Cruz is part of that.
Well, it just does not make any sense to me, to be honest. If people are entitled to their right to practice their sexuality the way they prefer, then Ted Cruz has the right to have his own opinions on sexuality too. And I'll tell you something, I am agnostic, atheist, whatever you want to call me, right? Why do I support a candidate like Ted Cruz? Because he is a constitutionalist and he is a Christian. I mean, believe it or not, coming straight from an atheist. And I'll tell you why. Because he has a very strong Christian moral foundation. I believe my personal moral foundation is also very Judeo-Christian. minus the whole thing about the guy in the clouds. And I believe that a person with a strong moral foundation is going to make strong moral decisions for our country, is going to govern morally, is going to follow the Constitution to the dots and the crosses and the T's, and is going to appoint judges who are going to have a strong moral foundation, because these people will be interpreting our laws, our legal code for ages to come. So that's the reason I support Ted Cruz. I mean, I support a candidate like Ted Cruz. This is not an endorsement of a political candidate. Just want to be clear. But trying to tell you what people seek in a political candidate who may be different than them in certain aspects, but they still support them. And that's why Caitlyn Jenner supports Ted Cruz. And she says something very legit, that Ted Cruz may be better for women in the long run than Hillary Clinton. Because he looks at everything from the lens of the Constitution, not from the lens of gender bias. What do you have to say about that?
Well, my personal view is a little different than yours, and I obviously we come from different perspectives, but I would suggest that homosexual behavior is contrary to natural law, and my personal view is that our legal code should be designed in accordance with this natural law. That being said, the Constitution does sort of dictate that the decision about defining marriage is kind of given to the states to make those determinations. Right. And as far as the Caitlyn Jenner, let me just comment on this. As far as the Caitlyn Jenner thing goes, it does speak to this kind of belief that if you have a dissenting view in the left, or you're in this kind of non-conformo group, then you're kind of blacklisted. Go ahead.
I'll tell you something. I mean, looking at all this, like when I realized there is no room for dissent in the leftist party, the Democratic Party, all right? I realized that the Republican Party is the most diverse party right now. If you want diversity, the Republican Party is a party. There's two Hispanics running for election. One of them is almost a front runner. There was an African American surgeon who was running for president. And then there is a former / closet Democrat who was actually the front runner. So, I mean, irrespective of your political views, I believe that, and with Caitlyn Jenner, and I'm sure there's more people like her, there's more people like me who always, who support people like Ted Cruz or Donald Trump. So, this does not fit the narrative that the media pushes, that the Republican Party is the party of the old white Christian males. Go ahead.
I do think this kind of LGBTQ movement is got a sort of evangelical zeal to it that is is more effective than even the Mormons in the middle of sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, they're converting. In my personal view is that and like I said, I can live with this idea that they have the equality before the law, but there is this sort of public conversion that's going on. In schools, they're setting up LGBTQ groups, and then they're kind of proselytizing to children these kind of values, and I think it's a sign of the times. It really kind of tries to amalgamate this sexuality with political socialism, that if you're in this group with other gay young people, then you somehow need to be a Bernie Sanders supporter, or you need to support a kind of radical feminist agenda. I think these two get superimposed with one another, and these values are being kind of inculcated to many young people. I think it doesn't bode well for those who would dissent on the idea of sodomy being open and exposed to the general
Look,
population.
I'll
Go
tell you
ahead.
something, man. There's two aspects to the story. One, um, school is a place to go learn, not to figure out which hole your PP likes to go in. All right. So, seriously, like, I mean, I understand, like, sexual education, sex ed, whatever you guys call it. Our sex ed used to be, like, in the back of the school and looking at porn magazines, all right? Now there's, like, I was surprised when I came to America, there's, like, official sex ed classes. I mean, and then the second thing is, if you're going to have this kind of sexual liberation in schools for the left, then there has to be some kind of theological liberation for the right. So, Christian groups, like, they shouldn't, like, people with more traditional Christian values, Judeo-Christian values, should be given an equal platform. Story recently in California, some school, I forgot what school district was, some kids decided to put these rainbow stickers with a line striking through it, like no to, I don't know, the gay thing, the gay rainbow, whatever it is, and there was an investigation over it. I mean, it's a little sticker on the school ID card. I mean, it's not even like they're wearing blatant big shirts. I mean, you have to, like, come really close to a person to see that sticker. And there's a whole investigation on that. And eventually the school administrators were like, well, these kids are covered by their First Amendment rights, so we are not going to take any action. I'm like, dude, I mean, seriously, like, do you investigate every LGBTQ group that starts in the school? Like, if they're covered by First Amendment protections? I mean, the traditional right of the country has become so ostracized by the left. And this whole idea with what's going on with Caitlyn Jenner right now, or what happens to me when I have to defend my conservative views in front of friends and family, is that, like, somehow, like, if you are not white, you owe it to the left, you owe your political allegiance to the left. Oh my God, you don't vote Democrat? I'm like, why? I mean, isn't there, like, freedom of political thought in this country? So, I mean, this kind of stuff needs to be pointed out at every opportunity. And the message to the political right is to embrace Caitlyn Jenner on this. I mean, she has been very vocal about her conservative views. We may not agree with certain things about her, but at the same time, I mean, if we truly believe in freedom, then this is our opportunity to embrace her political thought. What do you have to say about that?
I'm up for getting any ally we can, but this goes back to Faustian bargains. We're talking about sympathy for the devil. If you have sweetheart people that or homosexual people that you meet daily life, is when they keep it to themselves, I think it's but I find that Caitlyn Jenner represents this sort of coming out of this kind of social decay that I think it's a symptom of a larger problem of this over sexualization of our society. Being a prudish Catholic, it's part of I think this idea that the sexuality above all, and if we make a deal with Caitlyn Jenner and legitimize Caitlyn Jenner, then we're legitimizing this sort of whole movement of hypersexualization of pop culture in America. That's my concern.
Well, I'll just tell you something, man. There was a time when people like me would not be accepted by the conservative movement, and with time, like, conservative movement has become a broad coalition, and I believe that it's about time that we incorporate disparate elements who agree with us largely, but have certain ideas or their way of life that does not conform with many people in our coalition, their theological beliefs.
Can I make comment to that?
Yes.
I actually feel like a lot of Trump supporters
Yes.
kind of view the conservative, the mainstream conservative that way. They feel like many of these blue collar workers, they feel like they've been thrown under the bus with these trade deals, and that people like Mitt Romney kind of talk down to their kind of way of life, that they're just they're just a bunch of ignorant rubes
And
because they don't know what's going to happen to their jobs
yeah,
if we put a 35% tariff on. I mean, they kind of they kind of see like blue collar, Dixiecrat Republicans as kind of ignorant rubes, and I think that that's an umbrella that that needs to be open more. And if you're talking about broadening the coalition, I think that would be a better avenue to
well,
go.
let me add to that. I had this conversation about these newly found Republicans. I mean, apparently, like, the Republican primary numbers are crushing the Democratic primary numbers. Like, we are coming out in, like, not in percentages more than the Democrats, but we are coming out in, like, times more, like twice, thrice. Like in Nevada, I don't know, some crazy statistic, like there were 8,000 Democratic votes cast and 45,000 like Republican votes cast. And so basically, I'll tell you something, like, I think like these people are voting for an idea and they're not voting for a candidate. I believe that if Rubio was saying the same things that Donald Trump is saying, then he would be getting the same kind of traction. But I'll tell you something, man. I don't want people who simply vote in the coalition. I want people who have a strong philosophical foundation, strong moral foundation to be part of the coalition. I'm more selective about quality than quantity. I mean, like if you go for quantity, then guess what? The voters will give you another George Bush. Like, people need to be very smart, very informed who they are casting their ballot for.
That's an interesting thought, because because we do live in a sort of bifurcated
And
society
mhm,
educationally. I say that not trying to sound
yeah,
condescending to many, not the people who listen to the show, of
and
course, but the people out there in the general voting population. Um,
I want to
it,
add something to that. Um, I have more faith in Caitlyn Jenner with her ballot than I have with Joe the Plumber with his ballot. Not to say that I have a problem with Joe the Plumber, but I believe that Caitlyn Jenner has a stronger philosophical background. I mean, don't forget, like, she is a formal, she is a former Olympian, and she is pretty well educated, pretty well informed, and all that. So, mm, rather have good quality in the coalition than have quantity in the coalition. And this is a perfect segue to what we're going to talk about next. I remember that you wanted to bring up some conversations you had over the past week with some people.
well, yeah, I mean, let's start with the first one. I talked with this friend of mine.
Uh-huh.
He's a one of those Alex Jones kind of you know uh, alternative media, far right kind of, but he's, I used your metaphor from the last show. He drank the Kool-Aid of Donald Trump, but what I found was, just like these many of these Alex Jones kind of aficionados, they don't seem they don't seem willing to even hear any of the. It's almost just like we talk about on the left about inability to even hear dissenting opinions. I wanted to show a video clip of Donald Trump to this guy. He just shrugged me off. Nope, nope. I'm not even going to vote for Ted Cruz. Donald Trump is the only one with, Ted Cruz is bought by Goldman Sachs. Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
It was like almost like this kind of inability to hear any different ideas or any possible new pieces of information to inform your decision. And it was a little bit disconcerting to me. What do you think about have you met someone like that before? Have you met people
I
that are ideologues, but they're kind of brainwashed by this kind of
I I don't
Alex
sup-
Jones social media kind of
I
thing?
I used to listen to Alex Jones until he drank the whole Trump Kool-Aid. Alex Jones had some great reporting, and Alex Jones broke some good stories. But at the same time, I have not come across personally people like that. There's one person I know, he's my workout buddy, and he's a Trump supporter, but we have not like dug the surface. I'm not the guy like, hey, listen, motherfucker, you're gonna vote Ted Cruz, all right? So I mean that's his personal choice. I mean there's some time to go between now and when the ballots will be cast, and I'm gonna try to have a conversation with them in the meantime. Basically, like, bring facts to them like slowly. So, but when you go online, basically you come across with a lot of the people like these, and the on the message boards in the comment section on various news stories. So I'm very aware of the kind of people you're talking about, and these people are like the ideological / philosophical polar opposites of the nasty leftists. Basically, like, they feel like you have an agenda with the establishment. I mean, I never imagined myself to be on the same side as Rush Limbaugh, as Mark Levin, like these mainstream alternate media talk show hosts. I mean, I never thought, like, these are people who actually pushed the Iraq war. These are people who actually were the syndicates of the George Bush II presidency. And I'll tell you something, like in the final year of George Bush, I think it was in 2006, after the midterm elections, and even Rush Limbaugh came on. He's like, dude, I'm tired of carrying George Bush's water. Remember that moment? Like, that was almost 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
I think that was awakening for these people. Like, they have been like taken for jumps for all this time.
I think a lot of these guys get on board with Trump because of immigration. I think they put that as the centerpiece issue, just like Trump did at the beginning of his campaign, even though probably from these tapes that he's just playing to that audience. I think they kind of are concerned about the demographic changes that are happening so rapidly.
No.
And they're not, many of them are not really, they're secretly not really fans.
Bro, it's not about demographic changes. I mean, I try to make it very clear. I don't think like people have an issue with the demographic changes. Let's be honest up front. I mean, people have more concern about people coming in and having no understanding of how America functions. They have no understanding of how America was founded, and they have no understanding of the American Constitution. So my deal is that these people are more concerned about the philosophical / ideological makeup of the new immigrants. Most of these people are actually escaping socialist-driven poverty in many parts of the world, or authoritarian-driven poverty in many parts of the world, and now they come to America and basically they root for the same policies that actually fucked up their home countries to begin with. I mean, I'll tell you something, and this is what I tell people. Why am I so adamantly anti-socialist? All right, I grew up standing in ration lines. My first Saturday of the month used to be standing in the ration line, waiting for a ration of rice and sugar and cooking oil. You would never imagine that. I mean, that has a very strong impact on a person my age, as a kid, as a 5-year-old standing in that line, and then loading up everything on a bicycle and bringing it home to my mom. And there were times like there was no sugar. So guess what? That 8 pounds of sugar that you get for a month, or I don't know how much it was, you're not going to get it. In India, people consume a lot of sugar because we drink a lot of tea. So 8 pounds of sugar is actually not much. And there will be times there will be no rice. But, I'll tell you something, like these people, growing up, by the time, I turned 18, the economy in India was starting to take off. But, I mean, all these events growing up, like my mother struggling after my father's death with the government insurance company to get the insurance money, insurance payoff for years, so we could actually buy a house. She could put a roof over her head. Like basically the hospitals where people would die in the hallways because there's not enough doctors to look at them, or doctors want some extra money under the table to even look at a person who's about to die. So I have seen socialism in practice, and
the price controls you're talking about, isn't that kind of what's causing these shortages? They're setting the prices, they're over demand. Is this what you ascribe to these problems you're describing?
Well, of course. I mean, government cannot guess the optimum demand and supply, at what price and how much to sell and to whom to sell. So yeah, of course the sugar was pretty cheap, very subsidized, but I mean, what if there's no sugar? next month. Or how about the hospital? Yeah, it's free healthcare. You can go to any government hospital. But guess what? One, the doctor is so underpaid that, he wants some hush money to even look at you. Two, the facilities are so filthy that you probably will die of some kind of like viral infection, fungal infection, whatever. Maybe in the hallway, even before being looked at by a doctor. So, yeah, there's stuff that's cheap and subsidized. But one, the government decides who gets it. Two, there is the quality aspect. Do you even really want that? You want to eat that rice with those little insects crawling in them. You won't feed that kind of food to your cattle in America. So I was impacted by all this. And that made me come to America. I remember my cousin gave me a penny, with the Lincoln penny. And man, I was so excited to hold American money in my hand. And, I always dreamt of going to America. And here I am. But as the economy was taking off, I was growing up. And by that time, it was too late. I wanted to just go to America. But I don't understand all these new immigrants coming from places like Mexico and coming from places in Latin America. And I don't know, that's a different thing about the Cuban immigrants, like the early Cuban arrivals, the ones who came in post-Castro. Like, they came in, they worked very hard. A lot of them actually, they built something in America. And they realized the evils of communism.
Well, actually, I mean, a lot of the poor immigrants from Latin America and whatnot, they benefit from public, things like food stamps and socialized healthcare. But I was thinking that what I don't understand is many of the higher income Asian populations that come here that that actually vote for the Democratic Party just I think they voted 80% for against Romney, like for President Obama. I just assume that with income you would consider taxes more in the cost of your contribution versus your gain. And that's what I find surprising.
Yeah.
Do you have anything comment on that?
Well, yeah, it's because, the narrative has been established that Republicans are racist. They are the party of the old white Christian people. And if you're not an old white Christian person, then you owe your vote to the Democratic Party. Like, there is no ideological sense to this. There's no philosophical sense to this, but this is pretty much ingrained. Like when I remember when I first came to America, I moved straight to the South, made some Southern friends, including yourself. And I know a lot of other Southern friends, very great people. But it was ingrained. My brother did his best to tell me how bad the Southerners were, how bad these former Confederates were. A lot of people in the South take pride in their history, man. Like, I'm sure there's people in modern day Sparta who take pride in the Spartans, So,
yeah. Okay.
You lose a battle, but guess what? You never forget that's the larger cause that the battle happened for. So my thing is that, all these people come to America and basically they're brainwashed. So coming back, yeah, go ahead.
Let me talk about another little conversation I had.
Yes.
I have this buddy down in South Florida. He's a very high paid attorney.
Uh-huh.
And he's very much, I kind of like it. He looks very much like Marco Rubio.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell him he could be running for office. The guy's got the same look, and he's been a lifelong. He kind of he voted. He's always voted. What? Go ahead.
Briefly, it reminds me of that Sarah Palin porn film. So maybe he can go do a Marco Rubio porn film.
I never saw that, but I'll have to trust you on that one.
All right, go ahead.
But anyway, this guy he's always kind of bucked the trend of his. Most of his family are Democrats, and they're pretty successful family, and pretty high income, and he always bucked the trend. He always voted for conservatives and Republicans, and he had is pretty consistent conservative, especially on social values and things like that. And so he recently got is dating a new woman, like his marriage fell apart,
I
and
like the emphasis that he's dating a woman. Carry on.
well, anyway, he tells me this woman won't sleep with him unless he votes switches the Democratic Party, and I noticed over, like, I've known this guy for a long time, but I've noticed over the last year, his political views have changed, are changing. He was voting for Bernie in the primary, and
You know
and
what
I
I
was like,
call this?
go ahead.
The pussy that wags a dick.
Well, he's basically. I'm concerned. It's because I'm seeing more and more of these sort of conservative apostates, and many women, I
Yes.
would say, are converting these men away from conservative values,
Yes.
because to basically, you got to pay to play, is what I'm concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
It's going on, is you're seeing this phenomenon where women are sort of the new, you know. The new political force,
Yep.
and because of things like, they believe in women's right to choose, quote unquote, that these radical women views, radical feminist views are kind of perpetuating that
Mm-hmm.
on their men, and it's kind of a shift from when the men used to kind of do the opposite, where you'd get like a bonus vote because you're married. Oh, I get a bonus vote for whoever I'm voting for. And it was concerning to me. I had a long conversation with this guy, and I made a good argument about how if you raise the taxes on these, these one percenters, it's not going to all come from them. It's going to come from people like you, and that these, if you at some point you're going to have these incentive changes and money overseas, that's sitting over there is never going to come back with all these proposed taxes and regulations and things like that, and we had a pretty long conversation. I think I made it, I felt like I had done my good deed. I may have semi brought him back into the fold, but I'm concerned. It's like, it's almost a bridge too far when you're talking. Go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you something. These leftists have actually followed the playbook of conquering peacefully, real good, to the dots and the T's. Women are the seed of the civilization. If you have the women, you have conquered the civilization. And that's the reason you see all this bullshit, man. Moms against drunk drivers, Nancy Reagan against the kids using drugs. And then, this whole moms demand change, moms against Newtown violence. I don't know, all these, what's this guy? Bloomberg sponsored groups. Like their front faces are all women. And basically, they have managed to get into women's psyche. They have managed to convince women to join their side. And basically, now they're using women to get the men. Now, before that, they will get the kids. So
and they're coming out in droves for Bernie Sanders, and it's kind of sparking a new kind of radical left here, unfortunately, I see the trend going more in that direction than, than in the other direction. I don't see the picture looking good for the long term.
Well, I'll tell you something. America has experienced philosophical swings. The hippie 60s and 70s, and New Morning in America 80s, then 90s. It's going back to the left, and then the earlier part of the century, we're back to conservatism. I remember seeing the map in 2004 when Bush beat Kerry, and now we are having the swing back to the left. And basically, this will be a very decisive election. If the Democrats win this election, they get to appoint at least 2, if not 3 judges in the next 4 years, because Justice Ginsburg is retiring, guaranteed, in the next term. So that is going to have a big impact on America for decades to come. They'll totally change the ideological makeup of the court. So coming back to, basically their use of women to basically conquer civilizations, they've always done that, man. Like how the Romans, Julius Caesar, he actually got on Cleopatra's good side and conquered Egypt, basically. Same goes for a lot of other ancient histories. So the idea is that, we need more women who are more ideologically open to the diverse political thought, at least consider different side of the agreement. I mean, argument. I'll tell you something, like I have dated a lot of women who are actually like liberals. I mean, like, I don't even remember dating a woman who was actually like, conservative, except for this one crazy chick who almost shot me. My friends who are listening, they know what I'm talking about. And she was like, yeah, I'd go George Bush, I mean, hey,
you're probably using the term date pretty loosely, right?
What are you talking about?
I got the impression that this wasn't a very deep emotional connection and deep philosophical connection. It was probably more.
Well, all I know is that
lay down, Sally. Is that the term?
Well, I'll tell you what, man. Like, women tend to lean left, especially single women. Like, they've taken men out of the picture. Men are nowhere to be seen. Either they're in jail or like, they have an incentive not to be dads. Basically, just dip out.
I want to comment on that.
Make it quick because we have like 2 minutes before we close the show.
You look on cartoons and show that the man is always stupid and incompetent.
Same for like the sitcoms.
Yeah, there's a war on men going on.
Absolutely.
They don't want to admit it. They want to say there's war on women, but the truth is the war is on men. The men are being shut out. The state is co-opting the role of the man in a lot of cases. And delegitimizing the role of the man in the marriage, and that's what concerns me about some of this LGBTQ phenomenon. Is if a child grows up with two dads or two moms, they're not getting the same sort of socialization, family dynamic that is naturally biological, but it's also historically moral, based on every major religion.
This is a never-ending conversation. We both have our own agreements and disagreements on this, but as we close our show, why don't you tell our listeners about your research on the word Ajax Steel?
So it came to our interestingly enough, given our topics today, it came to our attention from one of our listeners that if you go on YouTube and there is an Ajax Steel factory on a Simpsons episode, and it basically Homer. I'll assume that all our listeners know Homer and Bart and everything. So Homer brings Bart to this steel mill to teach him manliness and make him a tough guy. And what he found was that many of the
workers
there. Okay, thank you. The workers were sort of flamboyant. Kind of go-go male dancers, and they were singing and dancing. And the steel mill was called Ajax Steel Mill. And I just want to assure the audience that our use of the terms Ajax and steel was completely completely irrespective of our knowledge of this sort of amusing video tape. Go ahead.
Can I just totally break it down? I mean, this is like totally coincidental that there is a gay factory in The Simpsons by the name of the show. All right. So, why did you pick your air name Ajax? Quick.
Well, it's the name of my dog.
Exactly, and you know why I picked my name as Steel, because I'm an artillery man. That's what I did in the army. And the call sign for my unit was Steel. So you were like, dude, pick a name. I'm like, dude, like, let me see the most badass name I can think of. Yo, let's pick Steel. I mean, I mean, at least like my name is more masculine than yours. What do you have, like a little teacup Yorkie?
No, man. Ajax was a Greek warrior who fought.
Is it dead? You're talking about was as in past tense? Is he dead?
Well, he was in the Odyssey, man. Oh, no, not the Odyssey.
I'm
The
talking about you picked it because of you. No, don't go to the Odyssey. You picked it
no,
because
no,
your
no.
dog's
Well,
name is
that's
Ajax.
what I named my dog from this Greek warrior who fought against the Trojan army, and he was with Odysseus, and he was with Achilles, and they fought
Now,
against.
now
You
you're
know,
trying to make it sound all badass. Come on now.
it's freaking bad. Why do you think I named my dog like that? But it's got that virtue, the being badass
Yeah.
warrior.
All
But he
right.
also
Yeah.
let me finish. My
All
dog,
right. All right. All right.
my dog is like walk off a cliff for me, and once you get that kind of loyalty, that name will stick with you.
It's
You
a
know.
yapper. I can hear him like 2 blocks away.
Hey man, you don't have a dog that'll walk off a cliff for you. So once you know that kind of loyalty, you don't go back, man.
How old is your dog now? Dude, I've known that guy since I had a full hairline in college.
So the dog he's about 11 years old, and
Okay.
he's
Well,
kind of losing it a little bit. You know, he
yeah.
kind of he crackhead stalks me everywhere I
Yeah.
go. But
Well,
uh,
no, that was a good discussion we had today. I just want to quickly add to our listeners that we could not record a show on the weekend because I was too drunk. No, just kidding. I was busy on the weekend, and Ajax and I could not coordinate on the weekend. But the whole idea is to record a weekend show, and this weekend we're gonna try to record a Sunday show. So we really apologize for coming in late, but I really appreciate you listening in. So thanks for tuning in again, and thank you, Ajax, for another great cooperation with you. I'm gonna go ahead quickly play a song before we close out the day. This is going to be Blake Shelton, Goodbye Time. Thank you, and have a good night. God bless America.
It's your life. You say you need a change. Don't all the dreams we've seen come true mean anything? You say it's different now, and you keep staring at the door. How can you walk away anymore? If being free is worth what you leave behind, and if it's too late for love to change your mind, then it's goodbye time. If we had known our love would come to this, we could have saved our hearts the hurt of wasted years. Well, it's been fun. What else can I say? If the feeling's gone, words won't stop you anyway. If being free is worth what you leave behind, and if it's too late for love to change your mind, then it's goodbye time. Goodbye.